time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
Hey now, and welcome again, ladies and gentlemen, to Mike G and the Garbage Gang. We've got special guest host Jonathan Chaffin here with us from Liberals for Trump, and we've got plenty of people popping in and out all evening to talk about the best, the worst, and some of the hopefuls for Trump's cabinet picks. I see some of the Mike G in the Morning family members of the Garbage Gang checking in. Hey now to Rita. So, Johnny, we've got quite a bit to talk about. Some dream team that Trump's putting together with these cabinet picks. Do you have any favorites that come to mind? I think I could take a guess as to who your number one is.
Yeah, it's RFK. For obvious reasons, I think it's like kind of shocking to everyone that this is a reality, that he's going to be part of the administration and has the chance to completely change the health system in this country, basically.
Were you somewhat concerned that he wasn't actually going to make it into the cabinet? Because a lot of people were raising those concerns.
Yeah, I think a lot of people thought Trump would like stab him in the back and use him for the campaign, get his support, and then not appoint him. I didn't think that. And he obviously made good on his promise. And this is so exciting, and I think everyone's just wondering, like, what is he actually going to do? Obviously, like, the goal is to make America healthy again, but what are the actual policy implementations that are going to be carried out?
So we hear some rumblings from people saying he's not qualified, obviously.
Yeah.
People on the other side. And what I was reading is that the person who's currently in charge has very similar qualifications, and nobody's complained about that. Is that what you saw?
Yeah, he's a lawyer, just like RFK. The complaint seems to be that RFK is not a doctor. I looked at the list of the past like 6 or 7. I don't think any of them are. So that's a ridiculous argument. And it's actually funny to see during the campaign, you saw it with Democrats criticizing him and smearing him as an anti-vaxxer. And now he's risen to this position. And it's the same kind of argument that they're making, I guess. Sure. But you would think, like, a lot of liberal people that I know are health nuts that are, sort of woo-woo and into eating whole foods, circadian rhythm, biohacking, red light, getting sunlight, all of these things that are kind of, they're both left and right wing. But I think of this thing with like Gwyneth Paltrow and her brand, everything, she would be completely aligned with RFK in terms of his kind of lifestyle and his vision of health, like foundational health. And there was this thing a couple of years ago that someone did an analysis of the supplements of Alex Jones and Gwyneth Paltrow's like Goop products. Mm-hmm. And they were actually, a lot of them were identical, but the marketing was different. So Alex Jones's supplement was called like Brain Dominator or something. And hers was like, pixie dust brain or something, but they're actually the exact same thing. But it's the other thing I find incredible is you look at someone like RFK Jr., he's 70 years old. He's incredibly fit. And we seem to be lectured. I've at least had the experience of being lectured by people who are going to see doctors in the medical system that are fat and clearly out of shape. They're sick themselves. So to be lectured, for someone like RFK to be lectured by people who are actually sick and not in shape and not healthy and not in touch with their bodies is really rich.
I think I told you about this, but when I was at UCLA hospital waiting for a family member who was having surgery, I wandered into the cafeteria and literally could not find a single thing in that cafeteria that I would put into my body.
Yeah.
And I thought it was ironic that here we are. This is supposed to be one of the top medical facilities in the entire world. and they've got a cafeteria that's filled with dead calories and sugar, and this is what these physicians are putting into their bodies day in and day out. They have a donut store. It just seems like something went wrong somewhere along the way. But excellent take.
Yeah.
Glad that he followed through on that, because that moment when RFK Jr. joined him on stage was just an absolutely iconic moment. And I think a lot of us were excited with what could be at that time. And now we're here.
Yeah, I remember that being that, like, partially made my views acceptable with another cohort of people when he endorsed Trump.
Really?
Like during the campaign, because previously I was public about Trump, and then RFK Jr. endorsing was like a softening of that somehow. Yeah, I mean, Western medicine, I've personally been damaged by a pharmaceutical drug that's altered my life. So, I mean, I've had that experience myself. Western medicine is designed to, I'm not completely throwing it out the window, but it's designed to treat specific things with medications and pills, and it doesn't look at foundational health. So there has to be some kind of incorporation or reckoning with diet. Like if you look at the food pyramid, has like cereal and all this other crap in it. Most Americans eat processed foods, seed oils, pretty much everything. I think we've been completely denatured as human beings, and pretty much everything we consume, if it's in like a plastic container, unless it's a whole food, it's pretty much not good for you.
So that's a good thing. That was a good pick. Any other good picks come to mind? Any outrageously bad picks that you weren't so happy about? I specifically recall us standing in Gold's, and at the time Trump had not named a vice presidential candidate, and you mentioned that you thought there were rumblings about Stefanik being the candidate. You weren't too happy about that, and now she's been appointed. Do you recall that conversation?
I do, yeah. I didn't think she'd be a good pick for vice president. She's a New Yorker. She's too similar to Trump in a way. I didn't think she brought anything. She wasn't additive. But she's going to be ambassador to the UN, which I think is such an awesome pick, because I think the UN is a joke that is basically run. I think Iran is on the Human Rights Commission, and China, it's basically run by like Islamic fundamentalists. So to have a tough New Yorker like Elise Stefanik, who's also like, she's pro-Israel, to have her go to the UN and represent the US will just be, it's going to be so fun to watch. So many of these appointees, I can't wait to see the White House press conference. I can't wait to see all of these people like in their roles and people just losing their minds and them getting on with their work.
I think the main thing with that is we don't want to be the entire world's protector and piggy bank. And somebody who can go there and stand up for Americans would be a great thing, rather than selling us down the river.
Yeah.
And volunteering us for literally everything.
100%. I'm not like a complete isolationist like I think Tucker Carlson is. I think we have to project power, but I agree with Trump's vision of it, which is peace through strength. And if you don't show strength, then you're creating openings for chaos and war. And I think we do have to be to some degree. We don't have to be the world police, but to have international trade, to have shipping lanes, all of these. America can't just like withdraw from the world entirely. But agree
you did protest the Iraq War, right?
I did 100%, and I think the Ukraine-Russia war never should have happened and never would have happened if Trump were president. I don't think October 7th would have happened if Trump were president, and if it did, I think this war would have been over much quicker. Between Israel and Hamas, it would have been over quickly, but there was too much hemming and hawing and playing both sides and toing and froing and lack of decisiveness and clarity from the U.S.
And there are rumblings that that's winding down right about now, right?
Yeah.
So that would be great. Liberty, I want to bring you in. So why don't you pop in? I want to hear what you think. Do you have a favorite pick from the cabinet so far?
So far, I am excited about Elon Musk, definitely. From what he did with Twitter, if he can do exactly what he did with Twitter and his companies and do that for the government, that would be amazing.
And I know what you mean, but why don't you explain what you mean specifically about what he did with Twitter?
So he came on and he just overhauled everything. He fired a lot of employees that were not needed. And somebody made the point, I guess, what the 70 million IRS agents, we have that going after
That's
small
70 million,
businesses.
70,000.
Oh, 70,000.
70 million would be quite a bit.
70,000. Well, yeah.
Not that 70,000 is a small number or anything.
That's
but
what
70 million would be
that's
a
what
little
it feels, or 80,000, I think it was, but it feels like that many, right? But why go after our own people, great business owners, and spend the money on that, and then let all of these people across the border illegally? Something is backwards, right? So I think that, and freedom of speech and bringing innovative ideas on Twitter, even community notes. People couldn't figure out this misinformation, disinformation situation. And Elon was like, let's do this. He just comes up with an idea. So I think he's great. He's one of the smartest men in the world. And he literally creates rockets. So I think he's going to be amazing for the cabinet. My favorite pick probably is him. And one of my others is Marco Rubio. I love his stance on faith. I love his voting record on protecting children and life. And I think that I'm really proud of him, and I think he's going to be a great Secretary of State. Yeah, so those are my favorites.
Let's talk about that. Let's go back to Elon first, because you raised a couple of good points. First of all, I believe the number is he laid off 75% of the staff at Twitter when he came in, and they still function quite efficiently. We didn't notice anything in the way of this website does not work anymore. And to find that much waste within a private company, if he can duplicate that with the government, even a fraction of it, I think that would be fantastic, because now they're posting out all these different things that our tax dollars are going towards, the most ridiculous things that you could imagine. And I'm sure that these are some extreme examples, but the fact of the matter is, even if they're outliers, it's our tax dollars that are paying for it, and they've got to go. So I'm very excited to see what he does with that. The community notes thing that you mentioned is also pretty important, because it's all about transparency. He created an open source system where the community can come in and add their input and provide context. And it comes down to transparency, which is exactly what I think this Department of Government Efficiency is all about. So people actually know where our tax dollars are going towards. I think the idea that Vivek's going to be involved with that, it's a slam dunk. That might be my favorite, along with RFK, tremendously exciting. Rubio is an interesting one, because I think a lot of people who voted for Trump were hoping for a peaceful administration and not being involved in foreign wars. And for some people, Rubio is a little war hawkish for them. But Liberty, you had mentioned to me that it's entirely possible that there's a specific reason for choosing somebody like that. When you go to the table to negotiate with these foreign countries, you can't necessarily have somebody who wants to avoid war at all costs. Trump mentioned in the Rogan interview that he thought John Bolton was a nut job, but he liked having him at the table because the other side also thought he was a nut job and was somewhat afraid that if they didn't fall in line, that they were going to be in trouble. So there's a little bit of that to it. I don't think you can necessarily. I do see the point that you can't necessarily have somebody who you know is going to avoid war at all costs. With that, I want to bring in another special guest to the program. We've got Lorenzo back joining us, the token bad hombre. You know,
that's right.
You're going gangbusters on the internet. A lot of people are seeing your videos.
Oh, good. I'm glad, man. It's got to get the message out there, you know.
Yeah, thanks for joining us again.
No,
so tonight we're
nice to be here
talking
with you
about
guys.
you're officially a member of the Garbage Gang. You know, we want to talk tonight about the cabinet picks. You've always been in tune with politics. Have you been following what's going on with all these picks? There have been quite a few of them.
I am, but the one I'm most excited about is Vivek and Elon Musk with the new Department of Dodge, right? Government efficiency. So, and part of it is, I mean, we got over 400 government agencies and sub-agencies. We got over 2 million civilian federal employees. I mean, I think it's time to start trimming out the fat. Elon Musk says we can save around $2 trillion a year in government spending. Let's go for it. I mean, all of us know that this is not sustainable. So if we can start trimming that fat, it's going to be good for America in the long run.
Are you surprised that America has lasted this long with our spending practices and the fact that we've spent so much and gotten so far in debt?
Yes and no, because in a way, even though the debt seems outrageous, we could always sell Alaska. We're a part of Alaska, you know, like we have enough assets. Or California, you know. What else? I mean, we have.
Just don't sell Johnny. Don't sell Johnny.
Who are you going to sell us to?
I think the Chinese can print a lot of money real quick.
Yeah, we already have Chinese communism here, so it's not a far lead.
The transition we're pretty smooth, no?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I am surprised in a way that we haven't done anything to rein in the federal spending, because it is a problem, and it's not a problem that's going to be solved only. The left likes to say, "Oh, we need to increase taxes. If we increase taxes, we're going to get rid of the deficit. If we tax the billionaires, well, guess what? If you tax the billionaires, those people can always decide to give up their citizenship and move to Switzerland, move to a different country, and take their money with them."
Did you guys find it strange that during the whole campaign, the deficit was almost like a non-issue?
Yeah.
Almost not discussed. Certainly, like never by the Democrats, I would say.
Yeah, I don't think
a
it was ever brought
non-issue
up.
and maybe like the most dangerous issue for the country.
100%. I don't understand why that is. Mike, you got any?
Well, it's never been a good thing for the Democrats, because what exactly are they going to propose? They never want to propose cutting any government spending, right?
Yeah.
And how often do you have? I remember during Trump's first term, some Democrats coming out and talking about that, which I thought was absolutely insane after 8 years of Obama. But they came out and all of a sudden they were like the wise grandfather saying, "Don't spend it all in one place."
Yeah.
But that, like you said, that sort of has gone out the window. I don't think that either side really had enough to make it an issue. That would be my suspicion. Of course, spent a lot during the Trump administration. Part of that was in large part due to the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think the Democrats are going to say, "No, you shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have, you shouldn't have helped these people during that time." They're not going to say that. They're not going to attack them on that.
Yeah.
So perhaps that's the reason why.
Yeah.
I just hope that somebody does something about it, and perhaps with this Department of Government Efficiency, we will see something be done about it. Lorenzo, what do you think about the border czar?
The border czar. I mean, I think he's a good choice. He has experience. So he's done this before. He's someone I think is going to be able to get things under control. At a minimum, if we can improve the situation in the border, that's going to be a win. If we can just stop the flow, right? We might not be able to deport every single person that came into the country, but at least stopping this hundreds of thousands of people to continue to enter America illegally or legally through, false pretenses, really, because like I mentioned last time, the whole idea that they are political refugees and they're seeking asylum, I mean, that's laughable. And anybody that's done immigration law knows the vast majority, 90% of these people are not going to qualify.
And even with the asylum situation, weren't things slightly different during the Trump administration as to whether the person gets to hang out over here during that process? And now
Well,
it's
yes,
taking
you had
people
the
3 years.
Remain in Mexico policy, right? So like they had to stay on the other side of the border while the process is going through the courts, which I think is a much better approach than just releasing them into the U.S., right? Especially taking into consideration that 90% of them or 95% of them are simply not going to qualify for asylum. And that's just the
And it's
reality.
taking several years before they actually have any kind of hearing or anything.
Yeah, I
And
think
if
last
you-
time I spoke with someone, it was about 2 years.
So 2 years, and then during that time period, if they know that they're not a proper candidate and they're not likely to get approved, do you think they're going to show up to that hearing 2 years later, or are you never going to find them
I
again?
doubt it. I think
that's
they're going
really
to
what's
play their
happening,
favorites,
right?
and they're just going to go wherever they want to.
It'll be interesting to see what happens with Trump negotiating with the new Mexican president, because she's a leftist, and Remain in Mexico is basically like we had to pay for that, for Mexico to agree to that, and she seems to be a pro-cartel president, and Trump has talked about declaring the cartels as terror organizations.
Well, I mean, the president before her, AMLO, or Manuel López Obrador, he was also a very leftist president, very pro-cartel. I mean, he used to go and have dinner with El Chapo's mom in Sinaloa, you know, the drug lord. He would just go have dinner with her, and he would just say, oh, she's just a citizen like anybody else. But Trump was able to negotiate with him, right? He was able to make a deal with him. So I think that he's also going to be able to make a deal with this lady, because at the end of the day, you know, it's in her best interest to make sure that the trade continues as is, right? So, and Trump has done it once before. I think he'll be able to do it again with her.
Do you think that the stopping the flow at the border is more important than the deportations?
I think right now it's probably more practical. It's going to be
The way I always thought of it, Lorenzo, is if you've got a busted pipe in your basement that's causing a flood and you go down there, it would make more sense to try to fix that busted pipe than first go and take buckets of water and trying to get that water out of there.
Absolutely.
And really, that's what somebody mentioned. The deportations that took place under Biden and the Trump administration were roughly similar. Well, if you have the pipe fixed and you're doing X amount of deportations, that's a lot different than not having the pipe fixed and doing that many deportations.
Exactly.
Because
I mean,
you're
if
still in a net
deporting
positive.
2 people, but four more are coming in, I mean, you're not really making any progress.
It's like a grade school math problem, right? It's
Yeah.
a grade school math problem. You got to put that in the textbooks. Yeah, that's fun.
That's
Do you
good.
have any of the cabinet appointments that you dislike, Lorenzo? Is there anybody that you heard about and said, I'm not too fond of that one?
I'm not too sold on it's the guy from Florida for the Attorney General position.
The Attorney
so
General.
far. Yeah,
Hmm.
I'm not sold 100% behind him. I mean, his father was a politician, his grandfather was a politician, so he comes from a line of a political family, which makes me distrust him, and I don't know how experienced he's going to be at being able to manage the Justice Department. So we'll see.
There were concerns that he was not intended to be confirmed. I think Fetterman said that it was Trump God level trolling to own the libs, I think were his exact quote. So we'll see what happens with that. If for whatever reason doesn't get confirmed, he's going to end up back in the government one way or another.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't think Trump's trying to troll anybody. I think he's trying to make sure that everything's good to go from the first day so he can get as much accomplished. Because, I mean, this is his second term and last term, and I think he's focused on leaving behind a the best legacy that he can. You know,
Johnny, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, what a hero's journey of Fetterman. How he's turned out to be this like he's like the best person the Democrats have. Going from like, that debate with Dr. Oz when he was running a couple of years ago to like, it seemed like totally absurd that he was incapacitated and all this stuff. It was actually, in retrospect, kind of horrible because he's totally with it. And he's like an unlikely hero.
It was sad because I had to deal with him for several years when he was lieutenant governor here in Pennsylvania, because as a lieutenant governor, you're on the board of pardons and got a ton of those cases. I do 30 of them a year. And I always thought he was a very bright guy, sharp guy. I didn't have any bad things to say about him working with him in that context. Of course, I have disagreements with him politically. We don't line up on a lot of things, but it was very sad to see the way he was after that stroke, because I had seen him for several years before that, and knowing that he's a sharp, witty guy. And I was actually upset that he was running, because I thought that it wasn't right for him to be put out there in that light. Folks like you guys, who that was your first impression of him, like, what is this guy doing out there? For me, who had seen him for years leading up to that, this is not right. But fortunately, it seems that he's bounced back pretty damn well. And I was talking to another attorney about this today. If the wind blows hard, he'll end up on the Republican side. I know that he was out there campaigning for Kamala and everything like that, but he's this close. He's this close to being a liberal for Trump and wearing Johnny's T-shirts. And if he does, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with. That much I can say, because you don't see, the other attorney mentioned, you don't see him criticizing Trump's voters the way you see many other Democrats criticizing Trump's voters. And the reason he doesn't do that is because a lot of Trump's voters are his voters. There's a lot of crossover there.
So we're not garbage, huh?
With that,
I think you're saying we're not garbage, but
so we're not garbage to him.
I don't even understand what the Democrats stand for anymore as a party. And I was thinking about recently Newsom has been in the news here in California as like a sort of anti-Trump. He's obviously setting himself up to run in 2028 for president. I think the smartest thing he could do would just be to copy MAGA policy and just change, like, with the exception of his stance on abortion and a couple of other things. And they'd be like indistinguishable from MAGA, but packaged in something that is more palatable to like liberal women and liberals. Because otherwise they stand for absolutely nothing. I couldn't tell you if I couldn't tell you what the Democrat Party stands for.
Yeah, I think they stand for being in power, right?
Yeah, just power.
Ideology, but that didn't work for them, so they have to look at themselves and see what they want to, how they want to move forward, if they do. I mean, honestly, I don't know many Democrats that have looked at themselves and at their party for the failure of the election. So far, all I hear is that, it's because either white men, Hispanic men, white women, like, it's just blaming certain demographics.
Can you guys believe that Tim Walz was actually a candidate for vice president of the United States of America?
I know.
And he loved it.
Isn't that
I'm thankful.
That's going to age so badly.
I'm thankful. I'm thankful. And I was concerned that it was going to be Shapiro. I was glad that it wasn't, because I think he would pose more of a problem for us. And ultimately, there is a chance that he is the one who turned that down because he thought the ship was going down. It's just a suspicion, but who knows? Maybe you're going to see him running in 2028. Lorenzo, I know that you're tight on time. I really appreciate you making the time for us today. Before you go, I want to add somebody else into the program. We've got a special guest all the way from Texas. And we've got Eric Lars Weaver Jr.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Classmate of yours and mine.
It's been a while, Lorenzo.
No, gotta catch up, dude.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, now we're all garbage. All right?
That's right.
Yep.
All right. Thanks so much for joining us, Lorenzo.
See you, man.
Bye, Lorenzo.
All right. Eric Lars Weborg Jr., thanks for joining us.
Thanks
Being a
for
member of
having
the
me, Mike.
Garbage Gang.
I'm looking forward to it.
So, Eric, now you worked as a prosecutor in a border community. Was it during the Obama administration?
It was during the tail end of the Obama administration, leading into right before Trump was inaugurated. So we were probably about an hour from the border. But we were on one of the main corridors that a lot of the nefarious actions coming from the border came up on the I-10 border. So my county was intersected by I-10. So we had so much in terms of traffic coming back up through there.
So you dealt with this quite a bit. You dealt with arrests, crimes that involved illegal immigrants?
Yes. So it was actually funny when I became a prosecutor. I learned that you could literally get a truckload full of illegal immigrants, and ICE had no interest of picking them up. And it was standing order for law enforcement to give them water, make sure they had safe passage, and just to turn them loose. Because the fact of the matter is one of the things that I think that a lot of people in the United States outside of the border regions don't understand is there's currently an overcrowding situation in our jails, not including the migrant issues or anything that's related to that. We're just talking run-of-the-mill individuals who have been detained or in custody pending trial for criminal cases. And for the most part, the jails are just overfull. So much so when I was even there in Gonzales, we're having to ship people out 3 hours away to anybody who had availability in their jail cells. So when you have that illegal immigrant issue coming across, and so many people had illegal reentries. Like if they were to get picked up, it would have been second, third time that they got picked up, which is traditionally an illegal reentry that if the feds ended up picking it up. Under the Trump administration, you'd have actually ICE holds. So whenever there would be that person who was apprehended, in addition to taking them into custody, even if the local authorities were unable to handle them, or if, let's say they pled out to, let's say, misdemeanor and they were going to take some sort of deferred action, that ICE hold would require ICE to come pick them up and bring them into federal custody once Trump came in.
So being in Texas, what do you think of the current border situation with this administration for the last 4 years?
Well, I think that anybody using just a minor sense of just common sense would understand that the system as is has been broken under the current administration. It's actually crazy because I actually had a trial in El Paso 2 months ago, and I'm talking with law enforcement out of El Paso, and they all agree to the same thing in that they're just feeling overwhelmed. And I think that the issue is the people are going to want to come. We need to put more pressure on the Mexican government to start doing things on their end to prevent them from coming up into Texas. Because we build a wall, we put, short of having military troops on the border and treating it like it's a demilitarized zone, there's going to be people coming across, or they're going to attempt to come across. It's a matter of when you can stop them, how far they can get in. But the most logical thing is to put that economic pressure on Mexico, like Trump did during his administration, to have them actually take steps to limit the flow of migrants across. And one of the things that I think too that people not in Texas or close to the border fully realize is a lot of people think that it's people coming from Mexico. I mean, they're coming from Mexico, but Mexican citizens. The fact of the matter is the largest amount of influx in terms of criminals are coming from Central America. And if you think about it in terms of context of geography, you have that pinch point in Central America where Mexico is. The best place to stop that flow of migrants coming up from Central America where the real violence is coming from on a large scale, put that pressure down there at that pinch point down in southern Mexico. And the only way that can be done is by getting the Mexican government on board with it.
So as a whole, when you see the cabinet picks that Trump's made so far, do you have anybody who stands out as one of your favorites?
I'm actually going to shock you. This is going to be out of left field. The one that comes to mind that I really like is Doug Collins, who's going to be the Secretary of the VA. Actually, Sunday evening, I went to the SEAL Legacy Foundation. It's a charity organization for former SEALs and particularly Gold Star families. And I had the opportunity to listen to a Medal of Honor recipient, Edward Byers, who is a staunch Trump supporter. I wish you could have saw the reaction that he got when he talked before everybody in attendance, and talking about how important he is, or how important Trump is to veterans and veteran rights. So many people of our generation who served in the military went to serve their country for wars that, looking back in hindsight, I think everybody has to admit was a complete and abject failure. We should have never did it in the first place. But what happens is we had people coming back who we ordered to act in the country's best interest, and they came back broken. And the resources that were necessary, or the resources they need to lead happy, healthy, and fulfilled lives for far too long has been neglected. And I think that this Doug Collins pick, if you look at his history, being a chaplain in the Navy, then after, I think he retired, then after September 11th, he re-enlisted or joined the Air Force Reserves as a chaplain as well. So I think that everything from his history shows that he really cares about our veterans, the veteran community. And I think we're going to see a change as relates to actually taking care of our veterans.
That is a good pick. I wasn't too surprised by that. That's an important pick. And I know that you've done work with the VA before, right? As far as helping people with the law.
I did. So that was my very first internship in law school, was working with the Department of Veteran Affairs off of in southern Dallas. So the added into it, everybody in my family, my dad, I think my dad's probably even watching this video currently.
Hi, Mr. Weborg. Hey now.
Yep. So I've always cared for that. And I've gone even back to, if you think about Chincheki, when he went in and he was claiming that he was going to be the voice for the veterans, and it's just been silent. Going back to Obama, Trump made positive change. Then, as we all know, once the administration changed over, everything went to hell in a basket, with just everything going crazy. And I think that you look at Afghanistan, you look at the decisions that have been made. I think that there is, in the current administration, a cold and callousness to our veterans. So I'm happy with Doug's pick.
I want to bring in one more guest, and I'm going to go around the horn with all of you. And of course, if anybody's tight on time, feel free to let me know. But we've got Michael Moore, and not the Michael Moore who makes those documentaries. We've got the good Michael Moore with us. Mike, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me again.
So, Mike, do you have anybody from Trump's cabinet picks that stands out as your favorite? And you might have a repeat of some of our other guests, but so far we've had Liberty named Rubio. We had Elon and Vivek with the Department of Government Efficiency. Johnny out of the gate was with RFK. And Mr. Weborg, Attorney Weborg, brought up Doug Collins. Who do you got? Who's on your fantasy cabinet list? I feel like we're playing fantasy football. We're going through the draft right now.
So I heard you guys talking about Senator Fetterman just a little bit ago. And
Sure.
I actually kind of wanted to mention something about him, a little bit more detailed information. So my dad actually knows him. A shop where my dad worked at, an automotive shop, Senator Fetterman was the mayor of that town. And like you said, I don't agree with him about a whole lot of political stuff, but one thing that I can say is I think he's a genuinely good guy. One thing, a story that my dad had told me about him, when there were good, honest, hardworking people in the community who needed a vehicle repaired or something like that, and they just didn't quite have the money, mayor at the time, senator now, would just send them to the shop, and he'd call down and he'd say, hey, my dad's name is Mick. He'd say, Mick, so-and-so's coming down. Take care of them, ask them to pay whatever they can, and then call me. I'll take care of the balance, whenever, and then they can pay me back whenever they have the money. So I think he's a good guy, on a very personal level. I just think he's maybe a little bit politically misguided.
He's a gun guy too. He's a gun owner. Remember that story?
Yeah. He was chasing the guy down the street with a shotgun.
Yeah.
Didn't quite fit the narrative there. Yeah. But no, I tell people that all the time, I think that's something that we miss a lot in politics, where we maybe demonize people because we disagree with them. And I think he's one of the very few people that I have any kind of personal overlap with in terms of groups of, people that we know. And classic case of, you can't judge the guy as a person by the political stances he takes. But anyway, so that said, interesting stuff. So I liked the Department of Governmental Efficiency, bringing that together. I mean, it's no secret that we've been hemorrhaging money for years and years, just wasting money at a colossal pace. I think that's fantastic. And I don't know that you're going to find two brighter guys than Vivek and Elon Musk to spearhead that effort. The one pick that I thought was interesting on a variety of fronts was Matt Gaetz for Attorney General. So my first thought was, it made me wonder if President-elect Trump had picked him to actually get him out of Congress. With the reputation for being a bomb thrower, I wonder if President-elect Trump was concerned that he was going to be too much of a disruptor for the agenda that he wanted to get put in place and sort of waste time and waste resources. So I don't know if we always talked about how president at the time, Trump, was playing three-dimensional chess while everybody else was playing checkers. And I don't know, maybe we give him too much credit, but I don't think so, because he's a really smart guy. That was one of the things that popped into my mind. Maybe it was to help remove him as a bit of an obstructionist. And then also something that Glenn Beck had said was, his speculation was that President-elect Trump was going to use Gaetz as his hatchet man, just to come in and just absolutely wreak havoc, which I thought made a lot of sense too. So I think that move could have a lot of reasoning behind it from a variety of different ways.
You certainly wouldn't have to worry about him being too timid or politically correct or anything like that.
No.
After what we've seen with the last 4 years, with what's happened with the DOJ, maybe it's time that the different parties aren't playing by different rules. Johnny, did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, but none of us have mentioned Hegseth. I was curious I was just curious what people think of him. I've heard a lot of complaints of him not being experienced enough for the position. So I'm curious what you guys think.
So Eric, what do you think? Yeah,
go ahead,
Eric.
Well, the two picks that actually caught my eye, not so much in that I had a problem with them, it just stuck out to me, was the first one was Gaetz. The thing I see with Gaetz is I don't think you have the votes in the Senate. And I would think if I was advising the Trump administration, the thing I want to do right when I take office is to hit the ground running. And one of the ways you can lose momentum in Washington is to have a divided caucus. And I think if you push him forward, that's going to just suck so much air out of the room, potentially. I could be wrong. Trump may be able to get everybody in line, but I think that you have that McCarthy crowd who are going to do everything possible to stop it. As it relates to Hegseth, I'm in agreement, and I've actually been I'm in agreement in that it's something that catches most people's eyes, and it's been one of the main talking points. And I've done a lot of research on him. I think that there's a couple of things that he's going to be perfect for. So when you think about the military, what is the purpose of the military? The military is the kinetic arm of the United States government and enforcing whatever policy or doctrine, and also national security. The number one responsibility for the United States military is lethality, the ability to defeat enemies when called upon by the United States President and Congress.
So it's not diversity?
No. Yeah. And that's with him. The main issues you currently see in the military are the recruiting issues, retention, and the lethality component of it. I think that he can come in there. If you ask anybody who served in the military, nobody says they joined for diversity. They all say they joined to fight. It's that war component that they're fighting for. So I think when you have a SecDef who is saying all the right lines, saying the purpose of the military is to fight and win wars. He's been very clear in his stance as it relates to how DEI has no place in the military. So I think you're going to see with him that increase in recruiting. You're actually going to see an increase in retention. There will be the holding accountable of generals, flag officers. You're going to see a substantial amount of turnover that's happening there. The only question that I have, so he checks all of those boxes. One of the nature, though, of the Secretary of Defense is they're overseeing the entirety of the military. And with him being a major, there's certain, and I think he only reached the battalion level. There's a lot of logistical procurement, overarching strategic issues that faces the government, or not the government, but the military itself. It's not just do we have the manpower or the tools necessary to defeat our enemies? It is an issue of, do we have the logistic line set up in case that happens? If something does pop off with Taiwan, in addition to the manpower issues, are we going to be able to have everything set up that war economy pops off? I think, though, that what you see with him coming in is you're going to see probably a different level of rhetoric that's coming out of the CCP. You're going to probably see a different level of rhetoric that's coming out of Iran. I think you've already seen Hamas has changed their tone, understanding he's coming in there. So I think he checks all of those boxes. And the only question is he going to be able to handle that strategic level of management of a potential war-fighting force, if that makes sense?
Mike Moore, any picks that you think missed the mark?
There aren't any that have really jumped out at me. There are a few that I want to do a little bit more digging into, but there's nothing that really jumped out at me as a terrible decision. Maybe some of them more curious than others. I in a sense, like the Tulsi Gabbard pick for a sense of bipartisanship. I think
she's Republican now. How dare you, sir?
I know, right? I think she's a really smart lady. I think she's going to do well. I think all of the folks that he's picked so far, I think they're all really smart folks. And while they may not have, specific experience in a particular field, my sense is that they're going to surround themselves with people that they can use to augment whatever knowledge that they're lacking until they can get up to speed. So I have a really good feeling that these picks are all going to be good.
What I really liked, and Tulsi was going to be what I mentioned as far as a pick that I liked. I thought it was great that Trump was able to band so many people together who had talents in different areas. So to have RFK Jr. and Tulsi out there on the campaign trail for him, and acknowledging that maybe, particularly with him and RFK Jr., they won't agree on everything politically. He's still acknowledging that you do have strengths and you can help us and you can help this country. And I don't want to stop that from happening just because we don't agree on everything. So I want to use you where I think you'd be helpful. And of course, Tulsi coming out and now switching her party affiliation is a great thing. I think she's going to do really well in that position, and we'll see what the future holds for her. One of the appointments that I was trying to look into further with the CIA director, John Ratcliffe, if I'm not mistaken, he held the position that Tulsi's going to be holding during Trump's first administration. So he's been in intelligence during Trump's first term. I believe he was a politician prior to that. I was really hoping that somebody would come in and shake things up. I don't know how much that's likely to happen if you have somebody who is sort of there from 2016 to 2020. But one of my major hopefuls that has not been announced, we've heard rumblings about it on the internet. I've heard that Kash Patel could possibly be in charge of the FBI. And if you're not familiar, listeners, with Kash Patel, there's a documentary called The Plot Against the President. Johnny, who seems to have dropped off, Johnny and I have talked about this on the program before. It's a documentary made by Amanda Milius, who's supposed to join us on this program at some point. But Kash Patel brought the house down in terms of the Obama administration spying on the Trump campaign. He's the one who blew the whistle and called out all of the misdeeds that were going on. And if he had the courage to do that kind of a thing with the backlash that he faced as a result, he knows where the bodies are buried, so to speak. So he has the courage and he's got the knowledge. And so if he were to be given that position of power, it's just incredibly exciting from my perspective. Eric, what do you think about that?
I'm in agreement with you on that. I think that it's so sad how what should be institutions that are for the public good were mechanized and weaponized against a candidate who was running for president and eventually became president. And even with all of that being true, you still have half of the country, or I'm going to say the Democrats, who are still thinking everything that happened that he was exonerated for is still true. And they all think that it's still a acceptable mechanism and tool for the government to be able to do, which is just absolutely sad. Being an attorney who was a prosecutor, who the number one role of a prosecutor is to do justice. And I think that that's the case for every single government official. Anybody who's acting on behalf of the United States government should be trying to do justice. And I think he would be a great pick for the FBI.
You know, Eric,
Yeah, I'd like to echo kind of. Oops, sorry, Mike.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I think it's great when we have people like you in the government. I know that you're no longer with the government, but when you were, to have people who work for the government who also are firmly against government overreach, that's very important, because I don't think we have enough people who work for the government yet are staunchly against government overreach. Mike, go ahead.
No, I got to jump off here in just a quick second, but I just wanted to kind of echo what Eric said. It's so important to have people who have a goal of justice and not pushing an agenda, right? I mean, it is the Department of Justice. It's not the Department of, trying to take out your opponents. And Mike, I know you see it on a daily basis as an attorney, and Eric, I'm sure you see it as well now, where there are cases that are brought against people that should never be brought. And a lot of people don't have the resources to fight the government, and it puts them in an untenable position where the end goal isn't justice. The end goal is a desired outcome, and justice be damned.
Yeah. And it's funny when Eric's talking about them weaponizing the justice system against a presidential candidate. As he was saying that, in my head, I was thinking he was talking about this last go around. So they did it twice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And really, something big's got to change. Otherwise, nothing's going to stop it from happening again in the future. Mike, thanks so much for joining us. Before you go, the most important thing: who's winning, Mike Tyson or Jake Paul?
Oh, Tyson all the way. He's just vicious. I mean, he bit a
All
dude's
right.
ear off.
Yeah.
He will do anything to win. That's the guy that you don't want in the Department of Justice, because all he wants to do is win. What's right doesn't matter. Winning is all
Right.
that matters.
Yeah. Well, maybe we could find a job for Iron Mike. He is a Trump supporter.
All right, guys, have a good
All
night.
right.
Have a good
Thanks,
night.
Mike.
Good night.
So, Eric, we got about 5 minutes left over here. I want to keep you on if you've got time. Liberty, did we mention anybody? Is there anybody that we've missed so far about picks that you're unsure of, or picks that you were hoping to see and didn't see, or maybe still can see?
I don't think so. I think everybody mentioned pretty much my favorites, and I have the same concerns about Matt Gaetz. I don't understand that pick, but I think what Mike Moore said, Trump is like, I don't know if he said checkers or chess, but he is always one step ahead. He's got some kind of plan. And I think he learned from his first term more about who to trust and who not to trust. So there must be some reason behind that. I can't figure that out yet, though, why he would choose him.
Eric, do you think they're going to attack him mostly on the ethics investigation? Was there an indictment? I don't want to speak out of turn. I know there was some talk about some kind of charges regarding crossing state lines with a female who was potentially underage. I don't know the details or anything like that, but there was something about that. Do you think they're going to attack him more based on that stuff, or are they going to come at him and say that he wasn't a practicing attorney for long enough to be an attorney general of the United States? Because I don't believe he practiced all that long. Do you think that that's going to be a potential issue?
Well, so what I want to say yes, and this is how I envision it potentially going is you have I think the Dems are going to pick up on the crossing the border with a minor, even though the prosecutor chose not to move forward with any charges on that issue. I think that I believe Johnson came out and said that he believes that any ethics committee findings involving individuals who are no longer actual sitting representatives is confidential, and he's not going to release the information coming out of it. I think what you're going to see, though, is a group of congressmen who's probably going to be, for lack of better words, it's going to be the McCarthy loyalists, even at the Senate level. They're probably going to be tiptoeing that line of the ethics and the experience component of it, I think, is what they're going to focus on, because they don't want to alienate Trump and they don't want to alienate an actual Republican. But I think there are those individuals who just don't want to see him. And I think I saw something that said that it was an article early where an unnamed senator, which you can take that for whatever it means, is they think that they maybe have 30 votes for him currently. So that means there's over 20 no's if the vote happened today. So I think that that's likely what's going to be happening as it relates to his confirmation.
So how much of an impediment is this going to be with Trump actually achieving the agenda? Because that was one of the things that irritated me to no end during the first Trump term, is that they didn't give him a chance. The minute he was in office, the minute he was elected, before he even got in office, they're talking about impeaching the guy. He did get a lot.
Oops, I think I lost audio there, Mike. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I
Now I
can't.
can hear you.
Okay.
Or I can hear you. I can't hear Mike.
Yeah, I can't hear Mike either. The government's trying to go after Mike.
That's probably what it is.
I really think so. They're coming for him.
Are you still there, Liberty?
Yeah, I'll give it a second. See if he might, as our producer used to say, did you try turning it off and back on again? So I think he'll probably log back in.
Am I good? Do you hear me
Yeah.
now?
You are good now.
Okay. Yeah, they wanted the deep state got us there for a second. But that was one of the most irritating things with the first administration is that they got in his way, and we just want to see the country succeed. And this is the guy we elected to put our country in the position to succeed. And really, this election, you had such a blowout through the Electoral College, and he won the popular vote. So we should look at that like it's a mandate for the Trump agenda. And if they inhibit that by not allowing his cabinet to come through, then I think that's terrible.
The one thing I will say, and again, there's still time in order for Trump to get the votes for Gates. Of most of the cabinet positions, as it relates to the, for lack of better words, institutional change, which we hope is going to come under Trump, I think that the AG, I think you're already seeing that the special prosecutor stepping down. If I was Biden, I would probably look at trying to dismiss all those cases, and despite the Democrats after what they did to him, and just pardon any outstanding charges that are there. But I think that the AG and what the Department of Justice does, so much of that is driven by the individual United States attorneys for whatever the respective court is. And Mike, you know all too well about the Southern District in New York, his pick that he has tapped for that as it relates to the actual change. I think that those United States attorneys that he's going to appoint that are in line with him for those respective districts are going to be more important in the long run. We would like to see his AG to get approved, again, just from a standpoint of not losing that momentum going into right after the inauguration. But if so, it's not like holding up somebody's NSA like Michael Waltz. It's not like holding up your SecDef. It's not like even the CIA, FBI. If he rolls with Kash Patel, that's more important to get in a grand scheme of things when you're looking at what change needs to come. I think those probably will result in more meaningful change in the short term, if that makes sense.
Do you think the Democrats would ever have this problem, though, Eric? If you had a Democrat president, you had a Democrat House and a Democrat Senate, do you think they'd ever have problems getting anybody approved? They all fall in line, don't they? Don't you think they have that over the Republicans, that we're more of a fractured party, particularly since Trump has come along? And it's not his fault. I'm not saying that.
I'm in agreement with you. And I think that's the one thing that I was surprised with from the Democrats when they had after the last midterms. I'm surprised they did not try to actually pick up some Republican policies and actually try to win some over, because there was that division in the Republican Party. But you're 100% correct. And you're right, and it happened with Trump, because if you look back to Bush, or when we had the Senate under Obama, McConnell had everybody in lockstep. And since Trump came, you see a lot of the institutional Republicans who did not like the change that was trying to be done, and you still have that split. And it's a matter of, and I think that honestly, when you look at the Mike Waltz and the Rubio picks, that's a way to try to keep the caucus together, even though there's some stark divisions as it relates to very specific policies.
Sure.
I was going to say something.
Maybe you don't want to have somebody who's not going to get confirmed. So a guy like Marco Rubio will do the trick, perhaps. But Liberty, go ahead. What were you saying?
No, I was thinking you guys are both high-level attorneys. So from a layperson's perspective, I don't know. I was just thinking two things. Do you think Matt Gaetz, because Matt Gaetz has been very loyal to Trump, and Trump is all about loyalty. So I was wondering if choosing him and the people who vote against him is Trump's way to kind of see who is not loyal to him. I don't know. It's just a random thought. The other thought was, I see Matt Gaetz. Do you guys think from a prosecuting perspective, do you guys think that Matt Gaetz, like, you know what I'm saying? He's seeing who is against him. I think Trump may be like trying to do something there.
Yeah, that would be some 3D chess level stuff if he's putting him in there just to see who falls in line and who's going to back him up. No, that's an interesting point. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah,
maybe you should be the high level attorney.
Yeah, and then the second thing I thought was, I've seen him. The only thing I know about him really is him in hearings. Him and Jim Jordan were always really. I would say they're really good at questioning. You guys are the ones with the experience in that. So I don't know. I really can't understand the pick. The only thing I can think of is, like you said, some 3D crazy thing, because he's all about loyalty. That's the one thing about Trump that I know and I really like about him. Is all about loyalty. I don't understand Matt Gaetz. So I'm trying to figure it out. So I was just seeing if you guys had thoughts on that. His ability to question in the hearings was really good. I'll give him that. But why would he do such a controversial pick off the gate after what he already went through with his last term? Anyway, that's where I'm thinking.
Well, one of the things that I thought initially when the pick came as to the why component of it, and Trump would be the only one to know that, everybody agrees, or I say everybody, a large proportion, or the popular vote agreed that the treatment of Trump over the past couple of years has been inappropriate. And I think when you look at the conduct of those individuals, it potentially raises to the level of criminal conduct under the guise of various privileges. And without going into the recent Supreme Court holding, there is the potentiality too that the individual as the AG is the one who's going to determine as it relates to whether or not they want to move forward with certain criminal actions against high profile people. They're the ones that's going to steer the ship. It's hypothetical too that when you look at it, when Trump's teams looked at it, they've seen criminal conduct that's occurred. And if they want that criminal conduct to be punished, as it rightfully should be, you probably want somebody who's going to have more of a, for lack of better words, backbone to stand behind that decision, because you run the risk, if you want to move forward with those prosecutions, having somebody who's going to waver and waffle, you're going to be in the position Trump was in that his first term.
Yeah.
Wow. You just made sense there, because Matt Gaetz would do anything for Trump.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's it. Eric, one last thing I want to talk about is when they were picking the Senate Majority Leader, this all happened behind closed doors and everything. You heard a lot of people who were pro-Trump and from the MAGA faction saying they wanted Rick Scott to be the guy. Gun Owners of America sent out an email basically saying none of these are good options. They wrote, not only was John Cornyn the driving force behind red flag gun confiscation train wreck of 2022, he called it a good start, hinting that even more gun control is on the way. They said Rick Scott, as governor of Florida, caved to the anti-gun media by signing red flag gun confiscation laws and gun bans for 18 to 20-year-olds in Florida after the Parkland tragedy. And finally, John Thune voted to confirm Biden's Attorney General Merrick Garland, who has weaponized the Department of Justice to go after gun owners and defenders of liberty. Now, Thune sounds sort of like the least of all evils by the way that they phrased those highlights of them. But what did you think of the process in and of itself? That kind of irritated me that you don't know who votes for who and you only get to choose from these three people.
I agree, but I think that what that is probably a result of what happened when McCarthy was forced to step down, or when they voted to kick him out. And I think that when you look, especially going into that midterm coming out of it, there was so much in terms of change, or maybe not even change, oversight. There's a legal duty that Congress has under the Constitution for that purpose of oversight of the executive. And that fight was just it was a clown show, for lack of better words.
It was
and
bad
I think
for business.
that's exactly it. I think they learned their lesson. I'm in agreement with you. I don't think it's proper for it to be behind closed doors. But if I was in the Republican leadership, I would say there's a value to having it being behind closed doors, just because I saw what happened in the clown show before. If it was the Democratic Party, and if everybody was in lockstep, and if everybody was basically sticking to the party line, that's when you have it be in the open. And that's where I was telling you about that momentum going into the new year. He's got a mandate. The Republicans have a mandate. The last thing you want to do is suck all the air out of the room by losing that momentum, by having that infighting be in a very public manner. At least I think.
Yeah, that's a good point. But they also better act on that mandate, because if they don't get things done as a result of uniparty people being in charge, then that's going to be a major issue come midterms. I want to thank some of the loyal listeners who have joined us so far. We got Rita, we got Lori, we got Deb G, we got Dag Nabbit, and I want to give each one of you a hey now. Liberty, before I get to Eric on this, I want to know who's winning tonight, Mike Tyson or Jake Paul?
100% Mikey Tyson.
Yeah, you don't think age is going to be an issue, though? Man is 58 years old.
It's an issue for sure, but listen, Iron Mike is the best there ever was. Boxing's never been the same, and I'm just rooting for him all the way. That's it. Bottom line.
So I've got two questions for you, Weeborg, before we wrap it up. First of all, Tyson or Jake Paul, who do you got?
I think there's a question of who I want and what my instincts tell me. I want Tyson to win. The way he wins is if he can fight in a phone booth. I understand, because Jake Paul is driving the ship as it relates to the rules. Like I'd feel much more confident if Tyson was going in there with 10-ounce gloves over 14-ounce gloves. I think that if he can close the distance and fight in that phone booth, there's nothing more that I would like to see is that patented uppercut hook. You know how he had that little real tight, it was a turn of the torso, upper body, like just one movement right on the chin, up close. I would love nothing more than that. But you look at Jake Paul, he's going to have that endurance component of it. He's in shape. I think what you're probably going to see him do is try to keep it at a distance. And the question is the longer it goes, the worse off it's going to be for Tyson, because the last thing to go is the power, but the endurance is the first thing to go. So if he can get in close, fight in a phone booth that first round, he stands a chance. But again, I'd feel a lot more confident if there were 10-ounce gloves.
It's really what makes it an interesting fight is the fact that Tyson is 58 years old. The fact that even at the end of his legitimate career, he wasn't who he had been. And otherwise, this is obviously not a conversation if we're talking even during that time, right? Because even the competition that Tyson was fighting towards the end of his career, they were better boxers than Jake Paul. And I'm not knocking on Jake Paul. He's fought people who I didn't think he would have a chance against, professional mixed martial artists, even though some of them were undersized and older. The fact of the matter is you can't take anything away from him. To get in there and to go toe-to-toe with the guys that he has and come out on top, that's respectable. But he's not in Mike Tyson's league. But the fact that Tyson's 58 years old and he has had health problems over the last year, we know. So that really makes it the perfect who knows sort of thing. Maybe it,
Well, it's it's actually what I think about in terms of Fedor and Dan Henderson as well. These are all people that there's zero doubt in my mind. If Tyson were able to land that flush shot on the chin, I think it's going to be lights out, period.
Yeah.
It's a matter of him being able to do it. And those are that's the component that if he had, let's say, the power of Mayweather had power in his division, but I'm just using this as an example, it would be like no chance for him. It's just the fact that Tyson still has that strength, that right punch, snap your fingers, lights out, and that person's going to be taking a nap.
So with that being said, we got a couple of older gentlemen fighting at Madison Square Garden tomorrow. And by the way, I really hope that Trump is going to be there at Madison Square Garden tomorrow. I don't know whether they've announced it or anything like that. But if Trump shows up at the UFC event in Madison Square Garden tomorrow, when he walks in, I don't know who's going to be with him, whether it's going to be Dana White and Kid Rock and Theo Vaughn and maybe Tucker Carlson. But when Trump enters that arena tomorrow for the UFC event, that crowd is going to go absolutely berserk.
Crazy. Yeah.
Who do you think is going to win, John Jones versus Stipe? And then we'll call it a night.
I've been burned so many times betting against John Jones.
Yeah.
That Gustafson fight,
yes,
broke my heart.
Did we watch that one together?
We did. And
Gustafson.
That broke my heart. But after that, I mean, I all these people talk about John Jones and act like he's the GOAT. I remember when he had that disqualification for the
Matt Hamill, right?
Yep. I remember watching that fight, and every single time I've ever had a doubt for him, he's proved me wrong. Yeah. And I'm going to say probably I'm going to have to roll with Jones on this one.
Yeah. I saw a video of Stipe walking into the arena. This is probably going back a year at this point, and he did not look like he was doing too well. It looked like his knees were bothering him. He's had some long layoffs during his career.
Yeah.
He hasn't been in there since Francis. So, I don't know, man. I think I'm going to go with you, though, John Jones. But it's going to be glad to watch it. It's not the fight that would have been a few years back, but it'll be nice to see Trump walk into that arena as president-elect. Place is going to go nuts. Can't wait.
And the media is just going to be so angry about it because everybody thinks that New York is 100% anti-Trump, and it's literally just going to explode if he does.
Yeah. I wonder how they're going to try to spin it. They're probably going to find 10 people and put them in a corner and be like, boo as loud as you can when Trump walks in, and they're going to take the video from right there.
It's the ultimate comeback. It'd be amazing.
I think that's one thing that people are savvy to over the last few years, though, is they're realizing that mainstream media, the legacy media, doesn't always tell you the truth, right?
100%. I think that if it's this election, if it proved anything, it shows how out of touch the media was.
Right.
Because or the traditional mainstream media, because if you listen to anything the past 6 months, it's Kamala had all of the momentum. Kamala had all of the support. The Dems were just going to it was going to be a blue wave. I think I even heard people say, even though that's out of date every time people say it.
She was going to win Iowa, right?
Yep, exactly. She's going to win Iowa. And no, I think that this just shows how out of touch it is, and how much they try to put their hands on that scale to try to basically, or what's the word I'm trying to think of? They're trying to manipulate the outcome of the events
Totally,
as
totally.
transparent as it can be.
But that's a very important part of it, is that they don't necessarily have the influence that they once did, or at least or even that they thought they had right now, because they were absolutely shilling for her every step of the way, protecting her in any capacity that they possibly could. It was incredibly unfair the way they covered him versus the way they covered her, and all the things they tried to do to push her across the finish line. And guess what? It didn't work. It failed miserably. The American people saw through it. At least a large enough percentage of the American people saw through it. I've been saying for quite a while that this election was nothing more than an intelligence test, and fortunately, enough Americans showed up at the polls that we passed. Eric, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I kept you way longer than you had offered to do, so I appreciate you being so generous with your time. It was fun hanging out with you.
I wouldn't have it any other way, man. Have a good night.
Thanks,
Thank
Eric.
you, everybody, and all the listeners. We miss you, Ellie. Daddy loves you. Thanks for watching and being a part of the Mike G in the Morning family. You're not alone. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like it and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and check out one of the other videos suggested above.